Cotton 豪華滅却
Hey, guys, welcome to my channel. This is my first what if, hope you guys like it. This is a story of what if Naruto was intelligent, or you can say smart or hardworking, etc. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, it will surely help me, and also it will notify you on my upcoming videos, and check the description for the creator of this great fanfic. Thank you. Now let's start the story. Chapter 17. Naruto flashed straight to his parents' home. He needed something to calm down, something to focus on. His mind was in a haze, with all his rational thoughts and logic buried beneath a storm of emotions he could make no sense out of. This was the first time he was feeling something like this, and his gut instinct was understandably confused. Fortunately, he had Kurama to talk some sense into him. Naruto. Calm down. Take it slowly, step by step. He rumbled in a calm manner, trying to work the panic out of Naruto's system by pushing some of his yang chakra through. He could feel Naruto trying to think this through logically, as he had done with every situation before. Naruto registered Kurama's shouts, and upon hearing the annoyance in his voice, he forcefully shook his head. He took deep breaths, letting each one out slowly. It took him over 5 minutes to calm down enough so he could listen to Kurama. He slowly sat down in the living room sofa, right in front of his parents' portrait. He put his chin on top of his joint hands and listened. "All right, I'm calm now, sorry about that. I just didn't know what to do," he said in a neutral tone, with only a hint of confusion in it. Kurama scoffed, "As you should be. I really don't see what's there to panic about. You should be jumping in ecstasy instead, having finally had your first kiss with a girl." Naruto frowned a bit. "Maybe you're right. However, even if I kissed her, she is going to be my enemy on the day of the finals. I don't know what I would do. As a shinobi of the leaf, it is my sworn duty to destroy the enemies of the leaf. However, I know that I won't be able to bring myself to kill Temari. And I can't even imagine the treatment a prisoner of Konoha gets." Kurama raised an eyebrow. "What you need to do, is slow down. It is not up to you to decide what happens to them. That's the job of the Hokage. Your job is to simply stop them from completing their mission, by any means necessary." Naruto thought about it, weighing Kurama's words intensely. He was right, he simply had to stop the sand from achieving their goal. He figured that he might have to take some lives on the day of the finals, but he could choose to spare some. He got up, his keen mind slowly working out the various possibilities and scenarios as he made his way to the simulation. He already knew that Gaara was the biggest part of the opposition's plan, so he would have to neutralize him by any means. If he could stop Gaara, there is no other trump card that he could think of that Suna can fall back on. He could choose to spare Temari, as she can't do anything on her own. Her other brother was easy to handle as well. Based on his observations, Kankuro was a skilled puppeteer, but he was also a bit of an idiot. Both were a very small part of the entire invasion, the pawns on the chessboard. He removed his resistance seals and set the simulation to level 6. He stepped inside the room and activated the simulation with the seal sequence. As his opponent formed in front of him, he settled into his stance, eyes steely. As soon as the command was given, he dashed forward in a flash step. "I will figure out what to do." The fight was tough, easily the toughest that Naruto had ever fought. The bruises and sore muscles were the definite proof of that. He winced as he rolled his shoulder, trying to relax it a bit as he exited the room. He had given it his utmost effort from the beginning, trying to end it as quickly as possible. However, he wasn't surprised at all when he was parried blow for blow, jab for jab. Neither managed to gain the upper hand on the other for a whole of 15 minutes. Naruto could not hit his opponent, but he made sure that his opponent couldn't hit him either. It soon became clear that he won't be able to gain the upper hand if he continued like this, so he activated the blazing hands technique. At first, it looked like he had gained a slight advantage, but he was forced onto the defensive when his opponent copied the blazing hands and used it against him just as effectively. Naruto absently fingered the small, burnt hole in his jacket as he walked up the basement. The blazing hands had caught him off guard for a moment, which is why there was a burnt hole. But he had managed to put up a successful defense, all the while trying to think up of something that would give him an edge in the fight. The fact that there was no pattern to identify did not help at all. It all came down to this. The only way he was beating this opponent was by catching him off guard, and capitalizing on that hard and fast, give the opponent no time to recover or think up of a strategy. However, it had to be something completely new. Something totally out of the box. It did not escape his observation that the moves he fought in the previous level did not work on the next. So he waited, all the while defending himself from his opponent. It took him the better part of 20 minutes to think up of something that even remotely had a chance of working. Blazing hands was somewhat based on the tree walking exercise. You have to maintain a constant amount of chakra on your hands or feet, however, instead of it being normal chakra, it has to be Kaden. Kaden was fire, and fire was weak to water, and vice versa. With this in mind, Naruto improvised. Instead of maintaining Kaden chakra, he changed the nature to Sweden. It wasn't difficult at all, if he didn't count the constant attacking on his person. It was no surprise that the blazing hands technique of his opponent was neutralized. But water nature chakra had no offensive capability in taijutsu. But his goal was something else entirely. He maintained the change for only 10 seconds, after which he switched back to Kaden. He smirked when he saw his attacks getting neutralized, the same way he neutralized them. His opponent was using Sweden to counter his blazing hands. This was the chance he was waiting for. Without a moment of waste, he had flipped away and charged back. He used the potential of his danger sense to the maximum, slowing down his perception, waiting for the exact moment to strike. When his punch towards the stomach was predictably blocked by a fist, he struck. Red lightning danced across the body of his opponent, sending his electrical impulses into overdrive and spasming his muscles. Naruto had gathered a small amount of his Raiden chakra in his punch. And since the opponent was using Sweden to counter blazing hands, the water only boosted the effect of electricity on his body. Naruto seized his chance. He would have to finish this in one move, otherwise he risked giving his opponent a chance to adapt. He backflipped, enforcing his right heel with chakra to amplify the damage. His opponent went flying in the air, and Naruto smirked when he heard the telltale sound of a bone cracking. But he didn't stop his movements. He jumped a bit and spun counterclockwise, timing his jump such that his left foot made a painful contact with the opponent's gut, sending him flying back. His back struck the wall hard, his head bumping back as well due to momentum. But Naruto was already flash-stepping forward as soon as his kick had ended. He had gathered a large amount of lightning in his fist, making tiny sparks go off in random directions. He struck his fist right in the chest where the heart is. It went right through it, emerging on the other side. The Raiden chakra burned away any blood that would have gathered on the fist, if it were a real opponent. As it wasn't, the simulation ended, signifying his victory. The sheer amount of lightning in his hand had given him a high amount of piercing power. The power to cut through almost anything. Naruto did not know, but he had unintentionally recreated something similar to the Chidori, the technique that Kakashi was infamous for. No wonder he didn't get back up, he thought as he prepared to flash away. The simulation had ended after that. His purpose was achieved, he had managed to distract himself from the whirlpool of panic he was going through. Now that his mind was focused enough, he could logically think this through on what he would do on the day of the invasion. And he had decided what he would do. For now, he needed to rest. He had an invasion to prepare for. Naruto was sleeping comfortably, a peaceful smile on his face. The sun peeked over the horizon slowly, and as soon as the first rays of the sun touched his face, his eyes fluttered open. He blinked his eyes several times to clear the sleep out of them. He then put his hands behind his head and just stared at the ceiling, attempting to piece together the facts he knew. Okay, here are the facts. Orochimaru attacked us in the second phase, making it clear that he is after Sasuke for some reason. From what I learnt from Tamari, the Sand and the Sound are planning a combined invasion on the Leaf on the day of the finals. So it's not just that the Sand and the Sound shinobi will be fighting each other, but the Cage will fight as well. Gigi is up against the Cage, and possibly Orochimaru as well. That snake just want to see the Leaf destroyed, given that he was denied the title of the Yondaime by Gigi. The fact that Gigi only cemented the fact that he would never become Hokage by declaring him a missing nin is only the icing on the cake. He wants to see the Leaf utterly destroyed. Naruto frowned heavily at his thoughts. The Leaf was in a very bad situation. He knew that Gigi must have organized his forces accordingly upon learning of the invasion 2 days ago, so he only needed to worry about himself. It was finally time to cut loose. He was ready to show the world who he really is. Though it will be amusing to see whether the world is ready to know who I really am, Naruto smirked. He completed his morning rituals and was waiting for his clone to finish making breakfast. Today he would be resting entirely, so he could fight in peak condition tomorrow. Which means he had ample amount of time to come up with a plan on how to deal with Gaara. He doubted it was simple enough to get close to Gaara to apply the 5 elements seal, for his absolute defense was nothing to laugh at. The clone was grumbling about slave drivers when he served breakfast to Naruto. Naruto proceeded to dispel the clone while he ate the pancakes. He began thinking of ways to beat Gaara as he slowly ate his breakfast. Taijutsu was out of the question, if what Gaara did to Lee was anything to go by. Genjutsu was a useless option to use against a Jinchuriki, for the beast inside them would release the illusion for them. That left ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. Gaara primarily used sand, which was a glaring weakness for Naruto to exploit. Naruto knew how well Gaara could control his sand, but he doubted he could control it well enough when it got soaked in water. Wet sand was heavy. Fire was only good to use if it was hot enough to turn the sand to glass. He could use lightning, but he preferred if it didn't come to that. He would douse Gaara in so much water he would be hard-pressed to find enough sand that he could control. Fuinjutsu was something he could use to a great effect. A chakra absorption barrier would effectively trap and drain Gaara of his chakra until he dropped unconscious. But that presented another problem. Kurama had told him that the moment Gaara falls asleep, Shukaku would seize control and get free. So he would have to deal with a Biju. Thank God for the fox summons, he thought as he washed his plates. He dried them and went back to his room. Gazing in the mirror, he saw his hair and sighed wistfully. A second later, a clone popped into existence, already knowing what to do. He picked up a blade and scissors, and set about to cutting the original's hair. Tears of regret flowed out from his eyes. Why are you cutting your hair, Prime? It is such fine hair. Naruto turned in confusion, why are you complaining? The clone scowled, I know what you want to do with your hair, and I say it's idiotic because we would look like idiots. Naruto snorted, who says you have an option? The clone grumbled as he set to cutting the hair, while Naruto remained on guard, ready to dispel the clone in case he tried to shave him bald. 15 minutes later, Naruto gazed at himself in the mirror, smiling as he saw his new hairstyle. He even had his whiskers removed, for patches of hair, with a pattern that he had, hardly looked good on anyone. He had cut his ponytail, causing his hair to fall around and making 2 jaw-length, spiky ear tails on either sides of his head. He experimentally lifted his right hand and spiked his head forwards. He smiled when the hair seemed to actually spike forwards and stay like that. People are going to get a heart attack tomorrow, he smirked. He went into the bathroom and took a quick shower. I have to prepare some backup for Gigi, for he may have to face the Kazekage and Orochimaru at the same time, he thought as he wiped himself dry. What do you have in mind? The sudden deep baritone caused him to blink once. About time you woke up. I was beginning to get worried when you didn't respond to my thinking earlier. Kurama scoffed, you're about 10,000 years too young to worry about me. Anyways, what do you have in mind? Putting on his clothes, he scoffed in return and replied, I'm only a genin. I can only prepare a few hundred shadow clones, nothing else. Kurama thought for a few moments and said, you know, you underestimate your shadow clones. Don't forget, you are a decently skilled mortal of your age. He gracefully ignored the snort from his host, and as such, shadow clones of your caliber can act as a great support for anyone. If you say so, Naruto absently replied as he dressed up as usual. He looked at his hair in the mirror, noting the way in which it formed a spiky mess on his head. He arranged it so it was spiked forward on top of his head. He wondered what to do about his ear tails. He knew that his father too, had jaw-length bangs on either sides of his head. He could replicate that, but he really didn't want his hair sticking around his face if it got wet with water. He could tie the bangs under his headband, but then it would still stick randomly when wet. What to do, what to do, what to do. It's quite rare to see someone like you, who never pays attention to relevant things, fussing over your hair, Kurama slyly commented. Naruto scowled. It's a relevant concern, okay. And when did I ask for your opinion on this anyways? You didn't, I was simply stating a fact, the reply was swiftly delivered. Anyways, I have something that you can try. A bit old style, but you might do some justice to it. 5 minutes later, Naruto was looking over his new hairstyle. You know Kurama, this actually looks good on me. You do have good advice sometimes. The beast snarled in annoyance, you sure have some nerve, making fun of me like that. Naruto smirked but said nothing, further aggravating the biju within. He had tied his bangs in the middle with bandages, and then tied his headband over the bangs. He has Ashura's hairstyle. Search for Naruto Ashura hairstyle. He grabbed 2 blank scrolls and his sealing supplies. He felt for the marker he had left on the training spot where Jiraiya trained for the last 3 weeks. He was gone in a flash. Naruto appeared in the clearing, spreading out his senses and confirming if he was truly alone or not. When he had confirmed, he sat down and opened one of the scrolls. Taking out his brush and ink, he started writing seals for a prisoner containment scroll, with a slight alteration. In just under a minute, he had completed writing down the sealing sequence. He inspected it for any mistakes, then nodded upon finding none. Standing up, he made a half ram. Around 200 shadow clones popped into existence. Alright, I want you divide into 2 groups of 100. Hi. For a second, Naruto feared that the sound of 200 people simultaneously shouting would draw someone's attention. He sensed for any foreign chakra signatures, but found none. Nonetheless, he had to do this quickly. It took him just under 10 minutes, but he managed to seal 1 group of clones into the scroll. Normally, a prisoner scroll is made for dead people who have no chakra. Also, it is made only for 1 person. So Naruto had to tweak the seals a bit so that the amount of chakra that was shaped into his 100 shadow clones did not get disturbed in any way. Also, he also tweaked the seals to allow solid, 100 constructs to safely get sealed. He exhaled a breath and did the same with the other 100. In 20 minutes, he had prepared a backup for himself and Gigi. Each backup worth 100 shadow clones. Alright, my work is done for today. Kurama, will my reserves be back to full by tomorrow? Easily. Leave it to me. I might even be able to expand them a bit. Naruto nodded, pleased with the development. All that was left, is to wait for tomorrow. Tamari watched as her sensei paced their room in agitation. She glanced over to the other occupants of the room. Kankuro was cleaning his puppets, but kept a wary eye on their sensei, as if unnerved by his recent behavior. Gaara was just simply staring out of the window, arms crossed. No one knew what Gaara was thinking all the time, but it wasn't that hard to guess that he was bloodthirsty. All this time, there had been no one who Gaara had managed to kill, aside from the second phase of the exams. He was getting restless, and that spelled danger for all of them. Tamari thought back to the events of last night and had to vehemently fight off the blush that threatened to cover her entire face in red. That was her first kiss, and it couldn't have been any better. The way they had moved against each other was just mesmerizing. But then the memories of what had happened before their kiss came up, and Tamari found it easier to beat back the blush. She had planned to tell her sensei about her being ambushed, but was dumbfounded when Baki told her that they may have already been discovered. There was a loose end untied. Some Konoha shinobi had been spying on Baki's secret meeting with their ally. Baki had almost managed to finish him off, but the shinobi was rescued by someone. Someone so fast that all Baki had managed to see was a blonde blur and a blue flash. Which meant that Tamari didn't need to tell him if they had already been discovered. Baki was getting worried about the next day. The Cage had told him that they would be proceeding with the invasion no matter what. So far, the Konoha forces had not shown any signs that they knew about the invasion. But he had a bad feeling in his gut, and his entire shinobi career had told him to always trust his gut. He had no choice but to ignore it and follow the orders of his leader. Morning arrived sooner than Naruto thought. He got up, thinking about what would happen today. Today, 2 things were sure to happen. He was not just going to beat Neji, no, that would be too light of a punishment for what he did to Hinata. He would show him just how little fate meant to him. He was going to utterly humiliate the Hyuga. The chances of him winning were already in his favor with his lack of a chakra network, but he would put effort for Neji. The other thing was the invasion, something that scared Naruto a bit. So many people could die, and those people would not just be the enemies, but his comrades as well. He would do whatever he could to protect his comrades, even if it meant putting himself in the line of fire. He shook his head, wiping that line of thought immediately. He would fight like a shinobi today, fast, deceptive and ruthless. He already had his plan on how to beat Gaara, whether they crossed paths in the finals, or on the battlefield. Gaara would either lose, or die. He personally preferred if it didn't come to the second choice. Getting up, he quickly got ready. He checked and double-checked his hip pouches and holster, nodding when he saw they were fully stocked with what he needed. He put the backup scrolls in the pouches as well, reminding himself to give one of them to Gigi. He tied his headband around his head and tied his hair just like yesterday. He smirked when he saw he looked almost like a mini-me of his father. Today would be marked as the reveal of the legacy of Yondaime Hokage. XXXXXXX. The village was in a buzz, looking livelier than usual, many people noted. However, there was reason to be. Today was the day of the Chunin finals. People chatted happily as they made their way to the stadium, talking about who would win and who they would place their bets on. Of course, most of the buzz was about the last Uchiha. Many people were sure that the last Uchiha would no doubt emerge as the winner of the Chunin exams. It seemed as if the name of Uchiha automatically distinguished them as the strongest. Of course, people had reason to believe that as the last Uchiha was no other than the younger brother of Uchiha Itachi, the greatest prodigy to come out of the Uchiha clan. So, there was a lot of hope placed on youngest Uchiha to perform well. Many other people were rooting for the Hyuga genius, Hyuga Neji. The boy was hailed as the prodigy of the Hyuga clan, and there was no doubt as to how powerful the clan was. A prodigy of a powerful clan such as the Hyuga would no doubt be another favorable contender for the title of the winner of the Chunin exams. Naruto smirked as he made his way to the stadium, ensuring he was out of everyone's sight. It was important for him to not be seen by anyone. He wanted his entrance to be one worthy enough for the son of the Yondaime. As he made his way to the stadium, he paid close attention to what the people were saying. Most of them seemed damn sure of Sasuke's victory, while the others were in the favor of the Hyuga. Others were not even mentioned, which suited him just fine. The more he was ignored, more potent would be their guilt. He wanted the people of Konoha to know just who they were tormenting all this while. As the stadium came in sight, Naruto changed his route to arrive at the back of the stadium. Looking up, he saw the back wall of the stadium looming in front of him. There are still over 5 minutes before the announcements begin, he mused. He sat down to wait, and while he waited, he thought back to what Neji had said during the prelims. Flashback. Naruto watched in horror as Neji stood over the downed form of Hinata, who was twitching in pain. No one can defy fate, Hinata-sama. Fate deemed you to be weak, that is why you lost to me. Flashback. End. Naruto frowned as he thought back to those words. The amount of scorn Neji held for his sister was unreal. He whispered, "Why do you believe in fate so much, Neji? Just what happened to you to believe in bullshit such as that?" He was shook out of his thoughts when his keen ears picked up an announcement, "All final contestants please get down in the arena." Naruto took a deep breath and stood up. This is it, he told himself. Looking up, he saw that the top of the wall was about 10 meters above the branch of the tree he was standing on. He made a clone, who charged his legs with chakra and jumped, easily vaulting over the wall. Shikamaru looked as lazy as usual, but he closely observed his opponents. His opponent, the girl from Sand, looked every bit confident of her victory. But there was a small hint of apprehension in her eyes, which darted around the arena anxiously. He didn't bother looking at Shino. The guy was as stoic as a stone, and never gave anything away. The glasses and high collar of his jacket only made it difficult to read him. The puppeteer from Sand was just like his sister, but unlike her, there was no anxiousness radiating from him. The last guy from Sand was the one that bothered Shikamaru the most. The redhead was dangerous, no doubt about that. Although his expression was stoic, it was betrayed by the sheer amount of bloodlust he could feel from the guy. He still remembered what happened to Lee in the prelims. Gaara had not hesitated one bit to kill him with his sand. He was a seasoned killer, one that Shikamaru doubted anyone wanted to cross. From the minute twitches that he could see, Shikamaru deduced that he was eager to get on with the fighting. He looked over to Neji, who was Naruto's opponent. Regarded as the rookie of the year of his batch, Neji was a proclaimed genius of the Hyuga, who were known for their deadly and unique taijutsu. While a formidable opponent, Shikamaru doubted he would win against Naruto. He knew that Naruto was powerful, but he had the feeling that Naruto had yet to show what he was fully capable of. Speaking of, he looked around, trying to find his blonde friend. Him and Sasuke, both of them were absent from the lineup, as well as the audience stands. If they didn't arrive right now, troublesome, he muttered. The proctor, a different one from the prelims, was standing in front of their lineup. A lazy one, from what he could see. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chunin exam finals. I am Shiranui Genma, the proctor of this stage. The matches will be as follows: Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Neji, Uchiha Sasuke vs Sabaku no Gaara, Aburame Shino vs Sabaku no Kankuro, and Sabaku no Tamari vs Nara Shikamaru. Turning his attention to the lineup, Genma continued, the rules are the same as preliminaries, however, whether you win or lose doesn't matter. Your promotion will be decided on the basis of your skill, your strategy and execution. Sakura looked worried as she tried to spot her two teammates. Ino, who was sitting next to her, said, "Where do you think are your teammates, Sakura?" While she still believed Sasuke would win the finals, she had gained a healthy amount of respect for the blonde Uzumaki, ever since she suffered the humiliating defeat at his hands. The ease at which he handled her told her how pathetic she really was. Also, it was evident just how much he was holding back from absolutely thrashing her. Sakura shook her head worryingly. I don't know, where are you, Sasuke-kun, Naruto? A sound coming from above the finalists caught hers, as well as every person's attention. Arena the proctor was just about to speak some more when a sound above them caused everyone, including the audience and the cage, to look up. In a puff of smoke, a small object fell right in front of the assembled genin. It was revealed to be a kunai, but not just any kunai. A three-pronged kunai. There was a collective gasp among the audience when they recognized what it was. Genma had wide eyes as he stared at the kunai, being reminded of the only person in the entire nations who used to wield these. Before he could think anything else, a person appeared in a blue flash. A pin-drop silence washed over the entire stadium as everyone got a good look at the person. Cage Box Hiruzen stared in awe as the person was revealed to be just who he thought it would be. And Kami, he looked just like his father. Minato, you would be proud of who he's become. Beside him, Orochimaru was seething. His fists were hidden from view, so that no one could see that they were clenched tightly. Uzumaki Naruto, it is not possible for anyone to master the jutsu in just a month, which means you knew it well before, and you knowingly held back against me. Very bold. But then he smirked, if you weren't the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, I would have marked you instead of Sasuke-kun. To have that jutsu in my arsenal. I would have been unstoppable. Everyone's eyes were at the point of bulging out when they saw the kunai used by their beloved Yondaime being thrown in the arena. Everyone had gasped collectively, and had jumped up on reflex when the person who had likely thrown the kunai had appeared. It couldn't be, it just couldn't be, were the thoughts of everyone. They were filled with disbelief, trying to deny what was right in front of their eyes. But no matter how much they wanted to, it was simply undeniable. Spiky blonde hair, which was no longer tied in a ponytail, but in a style that was painfully reminding them of a similar blonde. Two jaw-length spiky bangs, although tied beneath the headband and the bangs themselves tied around the middle, there was no mistaking just who the blonde Uzumaki resembled so much. He was almost a literal copy of Namikaze Minato, with only his hairstyle distinguishing from the famous Hokage. The Yondaime couldn't return from the dead, which left only one conclusion. To think that the demon container was also the son of the Yondaime. The crowd exploded in mutters, exclamations of, Yondaime, mostly drowning any other verbal exclamation. It was something that no one was expecting to see. No one knew that the Yondaime had a legacy, and now that they thought about it, it was right in front of their eyes all the time. Guilt began to creep into every Konoha villager about how they treated the boy, who was almost royalty considering just whose legacy he represented. Is that Naruto? He looks so hot. Ino cried out as she hungrily looked at Naruto. Then she closely looked at Naruto. While he had only changed his hairstyle, he closely resembled a person that was on the tip of her tongue. Sakura was beside herself as she gazed upon Naruto's new look with a slight blush. He looks almost as handsome as Sasuke-kun, if not more. Arena Naruto stood in a crouch, right hand grasping the handle of the kunai and eyes on the front, facing the genin assembled. He took in the expression of each of them. Shikamaru's narrowed gaze, Shino's raised eyebrows, Kenkuro's frown, Temari's appreciative but slightly guarded gaze, Neji's narrowed eyes but otherwise neutral expression. But what put him on guard most was Gaara. Pulling out the lodged kunai with a slight jerk, he slowly stood up, maintaining eye contact with Gaara. Gaara's mouth almost twisted into a manic smile, but it was so quick that Naruto would have missed it if he were not looking for it. He stood up to his full height, towering full 4 inches above him. Without breaking eye contact, both of them seemed to size each other up. It was as if along with them, their Biju were also looking each other through their eyes. A new feeling washed over the assembled group. It was as if at first, there was an existing sensation of a contest between themselves. Temari and Kankuro knew that Gaara was the strongest among the 3 of them, and the genin from Konoha knew Neji was the strongest among them. It was a clash between both the groups. But with Naruto's arrival, it seemed that the purpose of the clash went utterly void, for here was a genin whose aura seemed to say that he already knew he was the strongest among them. The feeling was unsettling. Uzumaki, Gaara whispered, though it perfectly conveyed his bloodlust. Naruto did not change his expression, prompting Gaara to continue, "Mother cries for your blood." Naruto merely lifted an eyebrow and said, "She's going to have to wait." He then proceeded to stand next to Shikamaru, who turned an annoyed expression to him, "You're a troublesome guy, have I ever told you that?" Naruto smirked but said nothing. Genma gazed at Naruto for a moment more, before turning his gaze and calling out, "Just to be clear, I'll say it one more time. The same rules apply as last time. Opponents continue to fight until one is either knocked out or unable to continue. I also reserve the right to stop the match when I see fit." With that said, the contestants of the first match will step forward. The others will proceed to the contestant stands to wait for their matches. Shikamaru patted Naruto on his shoulders and walked off to sit with the rest of the rookies. When the field cleared, it was just Neji, Naruto and Genma, who stood between the 2 fighters as the 2 sized each other up. "You should give up, Uzumaki. Fate has already decreed me to be the winner today." Neji broke the silence, informing Naruto as if what he said was fact, nothing more. Naruto smirked both at the squeals from the female audience and what he was about to say at him and replied, "Your eyes are said to be great, yet they can't even see that fate is not the proctor of this match, Genma-san is." Neji's eyes hardened. "Everything in life is set by fate, as is your defeat. But I can see you do not understand fate." Slipping into his stance, he continued, "Allow me to explain by demonstrating it to you." Genma knew an opportunity when he saw it, and he swung his hand down in a slicing motion. Hajime. Immediately jumping back, he made a half-ram seal. 8 clones popped into existence. "Go," he commanded. All of them moved in to engage. Neji did not seem alarmed at all. He calmly engaged the clones with controlled expertise, slowly but surely, dispatching them. Naruto observed that Neji's eyes never once moved in their sockets, always gazing forward. As the last of the clones was finished off, Neji was surprised a bit that another batch was already moving in to engage. But no matter, they would not win. Fate had decreed him to be the victor of this match. Stands, what is he doing, using Kage Bunshin against Neji? Asuma wondered, confused by Naruto's tactics. Alongside him, Kurenai and Guy also were wondering the same thing. If he knows the Hiraishin, he could have ended the match easily, so why isn't he? With Neji's Byakugan, any type of attack using clones wouldn't work because of his all-around vision, Guy put in his thoughts. Perhaps there is more to this match than just achieving victory, that we are not seeing. A few seats away, the head and the heiress of the Hyuga clan watched the match with impassive expressions. Hiyashi paid careful attention to the Uzumaki, who was intently studying Neji's fighting style. There was no doubt about it, Naruto was the son of his old friend, the Yondaime. Had he not known that Naruto knew the jutsu that made Namikaze Minato so known, he would have been in favor of Neji's victory. But now, he felt like Naruto was setting Neji up for something. Like a predator playing with its prey, before finishing it off. He would have told Hanabi about his assurance of Neji's victory, but that was before he realized just who Neji was facing. He wisely chose to keep quiet. Arena, there, Naruto mentally exclaimed as Neji finished off the fourth batch of shadow clones. He waited for Neji to get his breath back as he prepared himself, setting into his stance. He found out all he needed to fight this match on his terms. Neji finished off the last clone and faced the original, all the while mentally cursing. While it took much longer than he estimated, he was able to finish all of them off. But that wasn't what surprised him. The clones, along with the original, didn't seem to have any chakra network at all. The Hyuga clan's taijutsu was largely based on attacking the tenketsu in the chakra network, cutting off the flow of chakra where they struck. However, the revelation that Naruto did not have a chakra network almost made his taijutsu null and void. It was almost like he was fighting blind. Almost. Along with learning the locations of the tenketsu, the Hyuga also learned the locations of various pressure points. With the option of striking the tenketsu out, he only had pressure points to rely on. While not as many as the number of the tenketsu, there were enough for him to strike. He turned to the original, watching him settle into a strange stance. He settled into his, knowing that Uzumaki Naruto had given him yet another reason, along with being the son of the Yondaime, to believe that he was a very dangerous opponent. I presume you know that I am not a normal opponent by now, Naruto called out. Neji narrowed his eyes and deactivated them, indeed you are not. But that doesn't matter. Fate has spoken in my favor today, which is why you will lose. Naruto narrowed his eyes. If you insist on believing so much in fate, then allow me to show just how fragile the concept of fate is. With that, he moved. Almost everyone, including most of the Jonin in the stands, was perplexed as one moment Naruto was standing 10 feet away, and the next moment a foot was being barely blocked by the Hyuga. Many people thought it was Hiraishin. However, when Neji was sent skidding back from the force of the kick, they realized that Naruto had moved so fast that the momentum had augmented the force behind the kick, causing Neji to go skidding backwards. But Naruto had only started. Neji had barely begun to think when Naruto attacked again. He was shocked at just how fast and ruthlessly he was forced onto the defensive. As he tried to block the attacks, Neji had thought that Naruto's fighting style was focused more on the strength of the attacks, rather than speed. He was promptly proved when he failed to hide his winces when he felt the force behind each of the attacks. He moved by instinct as he attempted to redirect the force behind Naruto's attacks. The speed behind his attacks was nothing to scoff at as well. While the strikes had impressive force behind them, they seemed to be augmented by the sheer speed that Naruto was using to strike. Son of the Yondaime indeed. Only years of training in the martial art of his family and developing his instincts allowed him to dodge his attacks. Even then, he was dodging and blocking by instinct only. That wasn't the only problem. His hands were feeling unusually hot. Neji's thought process resulted in a punch slipping past his guard, right into his left cheek, and he found himself flying backwards from the force of it. He prevented from landing on his back by twisting himself midair and landing on his feet. His hand came up to tenderly rub the surprisingly, slightly burnt area as he narrowed his eyes, trying to figure out just how was Naruto defying fate. Cage Box Hiruzen was thoroughly impressed when he saw Naruto engaging Neji in taijutsu. Usually, it was considered suicidal to engage a Hyuga in taijutsu, but it seemed Naruto had no such qualms. Not just that, but his taijutsu was effective enough to put a Hyuga on the defensive. And it seemed he added his own touch to it, if the small burn on Neji's face was anything to go by. Most unpredictable ninja indeed. He pulled out a notepad, which he had brought to write points on which each genin qualified for the position. He wrote down something and kept it aside. Your genin is quite impressive and bold, Hokage Dono. He must be very confident to engage a shinobi of the Hyuga clan in taijutsu, Orochimaru commented, playing his role as the supposed Kazekage. Hiruzen chuckled, I'm sure that this is only the beginning, Kazekage Dono. He will surprise us, of that I have no doubt. Mentally though, you don't give me the credit I deserve. Orochimaru. Don't think I don't know that it's you in those robes. The surprise was evident on the faces of the three Jonin. Not every day you see a prodigal Hyuga being bested by the supposed dead last, now revealed to be the son of their late Hokage, in taijutsu. Guy was crying, shouting something about Naruto's youth, with Lee vehemently agreeing with him. Kami, is this really what he is capable of? Ino whispered in amazement and slight fear. She was suddenly, infinitely grateful that Naruto hadn't gone full force in their spar that day. If he had, she would have really been dead. Naruto. Sakura whispered in awe as she watched her teammate best one of the Hyuga at their own game. It suddenly became clear just how utterly huge the gap between their skills was. She couldn't even begin to see his movements, that's how fast he was. The first attack alone would have taken her out of the fight. A few seats away, Hinata watched with a slight smile as Naruto held his own against her prodigal cousin. Naruto-kun. Kiba on the other hand, was shocked and almost jealous of the speed and skill Naruto was displaying. It made him think back to his own fight with the blonde, and he ruefully smiled at how easily he was beaten. He had grown up with Naruto, and if there was anything he could say for certain about the blonde, it was that Naruto never gave up. He could say without a doubt that Naruto had trained his ass off to reach where he is now. It sort of inspired him to become the same. After all, if Naruto could do it, why can't he? Arena Neji hid his wince as he kept his gaze on Naruto, slowly standing up. He evaluated on whatever he had experienced so far. There is no doubt that he is physically strong, almost on the same level as Lee. I'm willing to bet that he could withstand the amount of force he dishes in his attacks himself as well. And he is fast, unbelievably so. Nothing else would be expected of the son of the fastest shinobi to ever live, after all. I never knew that it was possible to have such impossibly fast reflexes. His fighting style is lethal, but in a way I have never seen before. Every fighting style has a focal point which it is based on. Gai-sensei's Goken is based on strength, Juken is based on precision. But his style seemingly incorporates strength, speed, flexibility and precision. It's as if he can switch to any one of them if one proves to be inadequate against one opponent. Not just that, his movements are bizarre. He seems to have mastered the way to perfectly switch from one set of movements to another, without hesitation. His hands also feel as if they are on fire, burning any area of contact. Fully standing up, he took deep breaths to center himself. I'll have to avoid his hands, no, pretty much his every blow. Am I getting to you, with that fragility of your so-called fate? Naruto asked, and no one missed the sarcasm in his voice. Neji chose to ignore that, and instead asked, how did you manage to burn my face? Naruto rose his eyebrow in a way that strongly reminded Neji of himself. He raised his eyebrows that way when his teammates seemed to suggest an utterly stupid idea. So that's how it feels to be on the receiving side of it. He felt quite stupid to be honest, and was a bit glad that he had a burn on his cheek, otherwise his blush would have been caught. What idiot reveals the secret of his or her technique, Baka? Naruto asked in a bored tone. Cage Box Hiruzen heartily laughed at the question. It was highly amusing when in his youth, his opponents seemed to spare him the thought process of trying to figure out their technique by revealing it on their own. It allowed him to create a counter-strategy quite easily. Instead of finishing him off, they seemed to choose to gloat about their techniques. What idiots. A very true question. Won't you agree, Kage Dono? Orochimaru forced out a chuckle, while he couldn't shake off the feeling that the old monkey knew it was him and was openly mocking him. I agree, Hokage Dono. Hiruzen smirked and turned back to watch what was turning out to be a highly entertaining match. So far, Naruto had only shown his superior prowess in taijutsu, and had yet to show something that qualified him for Chunin, except for keeping emotions under control. He had to keep his smirk from widening, for he was reminded of a younger Orochimaru, bragging about the secret behind the techniques he developed himself. What an idiot. Stan's Kiba shared the amusement with his Hokage, for he was laughing as well. He never knew Naruto had it in him to mock others. Hinata was trying to hide her giggles behind her hand. It would not do if her father caught her laughing at Naruto calling her cousin an idiot. Sakura and Ino shared no such restraints, and were full out giggling. The Jonin had mixed reactions. Asuma had snorted and had to catch his smoking stick from flying onto the head of the person in front of him. Kurenai was stifling her giggles like her student, not wanting to offend Guy for laughing at his student. Guy had an entirely different response. Instead of being offended on behalf of his student, tears came from his eyes and he clenched his fist. What a hip response. No doubt, you have passed your coolness onto your student, my eternal rival Kakashi. Needless to say, he entirely ignored insult on Neji, choosing to focus on how hip and cool Naruto's response was. Arena Neji was barely keeping himself from turning red in embarrassment at all the giggles in the stadium that were aimed at him as a result of Naruto's comeback. Naruto was entirely amused by the giggles resounding in the stadium, but chose to keep it to himself. No need to embarrass him any further. Time to continue the fight, this time with a bit of misdirection. Neji was already worn out and trying to reduce the feeling of stupidity in himself, so when Naruto suddenly disappeared from in front of him, he was caught unawares. Naruto grinned as a solid kick connected to Neji's left shoulder, sending him flying away from him for the second time in the fight. He twisted and landed on feet, but was given no time to recover as he engaged the Uzumaki in taijutsu yet again. He activated his Byakugan this time, watching out for Naruto's no doubt, Kaden chakra enhanced hand strikes. But for some reason, Uzumaki's hands were lacking the chakra that was making them heated. So Neji jumped at the opportunity to block rather than dodge, all the while trying to find an opening. He also deactivated his eyes to conserve chakra. He would endure the punishing force for a short while. Maybe he should taunt him a bit. You are not fighting with your chakra-coated strikes as you were doing before, Uzumaki. He smirked as he saw Naruto narrowing his eyes. It seems this is where fate draws the line for you using the technique. He was shocked however, when Naruto, instead of getting enraged like he wanted, snorted out loud. In a surprising maneuver, Naruto locked himself with Neji, holding him in place. As much as Neji tried, he would only move if he managed to overpower him. Yeah, not happening. Neji grunted as he tried to get out of the lock Uzumaki had put him in. But as much as he struggled, he could not move the limbs of the blonde. His face twisted in a snarl, and he locked eyes with Naruto, who had a neutral expression on his face. Whatever he was going to say was thrown out of the window at the blonde's words. Only a pansy like you would call misdirection as an act of fate. He saw it, but could do absolutely nothing to stop it. Fuden. Repusho. Wind style. Gale palm. A clone, who had appeared beside them without any hand seals which caused a gasp to resonate through the shinobi part of the crowd, had enough compressed air in his hands to cleanly blow Neji away almost 20 meters. Naruto had released him from the lock at the very last second. While the force was enough to send him flying, it lacked a damaging component. But instead of feeling relief, Neji only felt dread. He had a feeling that Uzumaki had planned something much worse for him. Unlike the previous times, Neji failed to add grace to his landing and as such, rolled toughly onto the ground. Remembering that Uzumaki would not likely give him time to recover, he quickly got up to his feet, just in time to see 4 shuriken converging on him with deadly accuracy. He jumped to the side to avoid them, but was surprised by the blonde, yet again. So he decided to switch to long-distance attacks. This is good for me, for I might be able to use this window to recover a bit. But that thought was thrown out of the window in the next moment. Naruto had predicted in a split second where Neji would land, after he avoided those shuriken. So, he had cleverly threw 3 kunai, wrapped with explosive tags of his own design, to that spot. Neji grit his teeth as the kunai came closer and closer. It seems I'll have to use that. Naruto watched as the kunai almost hit Neji. His eyebrows raised in surprise when Neji suddenly spun, so fast that he wasn't even visible anymore, and was covered in a dome of his own chakra. Hakusho Kaden. Naruto activated his exploding tags just as they reached Neji, and watched with a mix of curiosity and fascination that the dome of chakra spinning around Neji completely protected him from the resulting explosion. Stan's Hanabi turned to her father. "To-sama, isn't that?" "Yes," Hiyashi replied instantly. His own eyes were narrowed as he clenched his fists. Kaden is supposed to be the technique of the main house. How does Neji, a member of the branch house, know it so well? Arena Neji stopped spinning, and couldn't really hide the smugness from his voice as he saw the expression on Naruto's face. He could gloat later, right now, he would capitalize on this small window of opportunity. No need to use the Byakugan, for he knew exactly where to strike. Naruto had immediately created 5 clones to scope out Neji's new technique and find a weakness, but his opponent's words momentarily gave him a pause. "You are now in the field of my divination," Neji ominously announced. Not wanting to give Neji the chance of using this technique, 2 of them shot forward to engage him. But this time, Neji was ready, his hands moving in a blur. 2 palms, 2 clones gone. 4 palms. Another 2 gone. 8 palms. The last one tried to shield himself. Futile effort. Even if you have no tenketsu, the physical damage from the strikes alone will send you down. 16 palms. Naruto grunted as the hands slammed into him with considerable speed. 32 palms. 64 palms. Naruto skid back as Neji finished his technique, breathing evenly. Because he chose to keep his Byakugan deactivated for the majority of the fight, he had more than enough chakra to keep going on. It was easy to ignore the physical pain when you train with people such as Gai-sensei. Naruto had blood dripping from his mouth. He went down on one knee, drawing gasps from the crowd. This was the first time he had taken any damage in this fight, and it was enough to send him on one knee. Looking at Neji, he asked in obvious pain, "I assume you were going for physical damage, if you couldn't find my tenketsu, weren't you?" Neji felt a sense of superiority as he looked down on Naruto. No one remained in fighting condition after getting hit by the 8 trigrams, 64 palm technique. You assume correctly. While you were formidable for some time, this is where this ends, Uzumaki. I told you before, fate has decreed that I will win today. Cage Box Orochimaru smiled under the veil, a most formidable technique of the Hyuga clan, Hokage Dono. I wonder if this is the end for the young Uzumaki. Hiruzen smiled as he wrote something down on the notepad. Don't worry, Cage Dono. Naruto won't go down this easily. Stands the Jonin had confused looks on their faces. Why did Neji do that? Couldn't he see it? Guy was rubbing his chin. I don't know what Neji was thinking when he did that, but it clearly didn't work the way he might have expected. While the news that Naruto didn't have a chakra network was quite staggering, they wanted to see how Neji would work his way around it. The genin on the other hand, were different parts worried and resigned. Kiba, Hinata, Sakura and Ino wore worried looks as they looked at Naruto. Naruto-kun. Hinata whispered in worry, knowing just how formidable the technique that Neji had used was. Even if Neji didn't have tenketsu to strike, the muscles that were struck would suffer considerable damage. What a technique, Ino whispered in awe as she looked at the kneeling form of Naruto. Naruto had completely dominated the fight from the beginning, but Neji had seemingly turned the tables with just one move. Get up, Naruto. Sakura was chanting in her mind, restraining from saying it out loud. Tenten on the other hand, just shook her head as if she already knew this was going to happen. While you were good Naruto, there is no way you can recover from this. Arena Naruto, despite being in pain, chuckled. Neji rose an eyebrow, what's so funny? Naruto looked up with mirth swimming in his eyes, and I told you, fate is very fragile. And he burst into smoke. Cheers erupted from the crowd as it was revealed that the Uzumaki had pulled a fast one on everyone, including Neji. The said genin cursed as he activated his Byakugan and looked around. He almost gasped when he found out where Naruto was, but wasn't able to react in time. Naruto burst from the ground behind him, a predatory grin on his face and body already in motion. Neji was able to angle his body so that his left shoulder took the hit instead of his head. But he winced as the already abused shoulder took another hit, and he was sent toppling away. Naruto brushed off some of the dirt as Neji let out a small groan of pain and frustration, standing up. Most people don't think to look down at the last second. Am I right? Neji said nothing as he gazed scornfully at the smirking blonde. You made the mistake of deactivating your eyes. If you hadn't, you might have noticed that I substituted with my clone at the last second. Your mistake also allowed me to hide without worry under the ground. Pretty good for misdirection and deception, don't you think? Neji grit his teeth. Even if you had substituted with your clone, a shadow clone gets dispelled after one hit. Naruto made a sound of mock realization. Oh, that, I reinforced it with chakra. It's really not that difficult. He then smirked in a way that sent shivers down Neji's spine. I've somewhat heard about your defensive technique. The ultimate defense of the Hyuga, isn't it? Neji said nothing, which was more than enough for an answer. Holding up 4 shuriken, he challenged, let's test that so-called ultimate defense, shall we? Cage box, your genin is very ingenious, Hokage Dono. Hiruzen nodded, pride coursing through him at how well Naruto was handling himself. So far, Naruto had demonstrated skills that were already above the qualification level of Chunin. He wondered just how Naruto planned to break the ultimate defense of the Hyuga clan. Stands Kiba, Ino and Sakura had shouted in glee when Naruto had popped, the real Naruto kicking Neji away. Hinata had quietly cheered for Naruto, while Tenten was in a state of disbelief. While even Lee couldn't get up after Neji's technique, it was a whole another thing to avoid it successfully altogether. Arena the shuriken whizzed towards Neji, who jumped to the side to avoid them, opting to conserve chakra. He was stupefied, however, when he spotted a giant ball of fire making its way towards him, fast. Having no time to jump again, he was forced to resort to his defense. Kaden. Neji reached his maximum rotation speed just as the fireball reached him. The fireball crashed into the spinning dome of chakra, taking only 5 seconds to disperse, which was 4 seconds too late for Neji. It was hard to accurately keep track of your surroundings when you were spinning at a really high speed. So one moment Neji was inside the dome, the other moment Naruto was inside with him. Wait, what? This time, Neji didn't even have time to be fully surprised as he was punched in the face, hard. The sudden application of an external force disrupted the Kaden, and Neji was bodily thrown through the fireball. I'm really getting tired of being thrown like that, Neji lamented as he stood up once again, a bit burnt from going through the fireball. Stans Asuma and Kurenai were gawking at the way Naruto broke the defensive technique. One moment he was standing outside the dome, the other moment they all saw him disappearing and appearing instantly inside the dome in a blue flash. Hiraishin, Guy whispered in awe. Even he had not found a way yet to break that defensive technique. But if the Hiraishin could surpass defenses with such amount of ease. It really was a terrifying technique. No wonder the Yondaime was so feared. Cage box, I really have no more words to describe how impressive that genin of yours is Hokage Dono. To learn and master the Yondaime's most feared technique at such a young age is no small feat, Kazekage complimented. Hiruzen smirked and nodded. That was a masterful use of the Hiraishin. Naruto must have marked Neji at the very first opportunity. Also, to be capable of using 2 elemental natures is very impressive, Orochimaru complimented. Hiruzen accepted the compliment on behalf of Naruto with a nod and a smirk. Arena Neji breathed heavily as he gazed at Naruto. He was down to just a quarter of his chakra reserves, while Naruto had yet to show any signs of fatigue. What he didn't know that Naruto's chakra reserves were so much larger that he had only used a small drop of the entirety yet. How did I break your defense? Naruto helpfully finished it for him. When he saw him nod, he sighed. While I did say before that only idiots reveal their technique, it's no big secret as to the way I appeared inside with you. Reaching behind him, he pulled out his Hiraishin kunai, dangling it in his index finger. I'm sure you know what this is. He looked around, discreetly seeing that he had captured the attention of the entire audience. This is a kunai that was once used by my father, Namikaze Minato. Mutters rose in the crowd in response to the confirmation of their thoughts from before, but quickly silenced when Naruto continued. The Hiraishin no Jutsu is a space-time technique, a combination of ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. Basically, this formula here, he showed him his imprinted formula, acts as a beacon for me. Wherever this formula is, I can teleport there without any problem. That means, the reason I was able to get in there is because you already have a mark on you. Neji had never widened his eyes this much in his entire life. He desperately searched for the place where Naruto had placed his formula, and found it beneath his forearm. Never before had he been so outclassed in a fight. How had he failed to notice such a simple thing? Naruto spun the kunai, catching it in a reverse hold. The look on his face was almost as if set in stone. It was the same look the yellow flash gave to his enemies before killing them. I could have ended the fight the moment we engaged in taijutsu. In another scenario, if you would have been my enemy and not a comrade, you were dead the moment I put this mark on you. Silence rang in the entire statement as the cold truth of the words hit each person. It was only now that they realized just how truly dangerous and lethal the Yondaime's use of this jutsu was. It was basically as if you were marked by death. If you had this mark, there was no escape for you. Then why didn't you? Naruto raised an eyebrow, and put the kunai back in his pouch. Tell me something, Neji. Why do you believe in fate so much? What gives you the excuse to claim that everything is fated to be? Neji looked surprised for a moment, but then his eyes hardened. He reached for his headband and removed it. Because of this, he said, pointing to a green seal on his forehead. It was a cross in the middle, with hooks on either side of the cross. The bird cage seal is given to the branch house members of the Hyuga clan by the main house members. While it may seem that both the houses are family, it is a lie. The cold reality is that the branch house members only act as servants to the main house, he explained. Naruto didn't attack him when Neji closed his eyes, instead opting to hear his story out. The seal is given to the branch house members to protect our prized bloodline from falling into our enemies' hands. After the death of a house member, the seal activates and seals the abilities of Byakugan. By that, I mean this seal binds us until death. A destiny from which we cannot escape. Neji told him about the Hyuga incident which happened 8 years ago. How Hinata was almost kidnapped by the ambassador from Kumogakure no Sato. How the village had demanded the death of Hiyashi Hyuga as compensation, how his father was offered instead. Till the end of the explanation, Naruto did not allow one speck of emotion to show on his face. When Neji was finished, then Naruto spoke. You speak that it is fate that the branch family will always remain bound, yet you contradicted your own belief when you tried to kill Hinata in the prelims. You tried to divert from your predestined path. All of this, because you hold a grudge against the main family. Neji finally lost control of himself. My father was taken away from me because Hiyashi-sama couldn't take the responsibility for his actions. My father had to give his own life, just so Hiyashi-sama could keep on living. Naruto said nothing for a while. Neji thought he had got through the blonde, but was shell-shocked when he heard Naruto's next words. I already planned on winning today, but I'll say it just for you. I won't be losing to a coward who's always blaming all of his problems on some nonsense such as fate. Someone as ignorant as you is in no position to lecture me, Neji shot back. You can never understand what it's like to be burdened with a symbol you can never be rid of. There was a pin-drop silence in the whole stadium. The whole audience felt the impact of the words. Neji couldn't have been more wrong. The senior shinobi feared Naruto would lose it, even the Hokage. But thankfully, Naruto kept a tight lid on his emotions. It wouldn't do losing it in the center of a crowd. Naruto sighed wistfully, whispering, "You're wrong. I know exactly how it feels, but enough talk." He finished in a strong voice. He made a ram seal, and Neji felt that it was better to be cautious rather than just wait and see what happens. Immediately, he jumped back, or tried to anyway. It wasn't as if he was paralyzed, but it felt like his body was stuck in mud. Just as you have to struggle to move your limbs when drowned in water or mud, Neji had to struggle to just move his arms. It was as if he was stuck in clay. What the hell is this? Naruto was calmly walking forward, now that he had successfully activated his seal. Resistance seals. While normally used for training, it's somewhat unusual to apply it in combat. You are currently experiencing a level 3 resistance. Fuinjutsu is perhaps the most versatile of the shinobi arts, won't you agree? Cage box, your genin is just full of surprises, Hokage Dono. To make use of seals so efficiently in combat, with just his chakra, it's almost as if he is already an expert. Not many choose to study that particular art. Hiruzen chuckled and replied, Naruto is more than just skilled in Fuinjutsu. He is perhaps the most skilled person I have ever seen. Not surprising, if you consider just who his father was. The other, Kage, nodded in approval. He definitely qualifies for Chunin. To think he had managed to put a Hiraishin and a resistance seal on his opponent. He had been several steps ahead of his opponent right from the beginning of the match. Hiruzen absently nodded, choosing to focus on the match. Taijutsu, Ninjutsu, Fuinjutsu. Stands, I didn't know Naruto knew Fuinjutsu like that. Ino exclaimed. Sakura smiled, proud of having a teammate like Naruto. Naruto is an expert in them, you know. Kiba hollered, Yosh. Go, Naruto. Tenten was dumbstruck just how many steps Naruto had been ahead of her teammate. The Jonin were beside themselves. Asuma was rubbing his head, You know, he really is quite well versed in sealing for his age. Not many people can apply seals with their chakra just like that. Kurenai nodded, and both of them tried to block out guys shouting of how youthfully Naruto was displaying his skills. Arena Neji stood rooted to his place, and to his horror, Naruto came running towards him, with him being unable to do anything about it. He received a painful punch on his right cheek, and the force behind it was enough to send him stumbling to his left. It hurt, considering he was experiencing resistance in his movements. Naruto was suddenly in front of him, punching at the same spot again. Only this time, it hurt a lot more than before. The result was the same, Neji went stumbling to his left. Finishing it off, Naruto 540 kicked the side of his head with such force, that Neji could have sworn he saw stars in front of his eyes. He was sent onto the ground, and this time, there was no getting back up. You might think that it was because of the resistance seal, but no. He had taken way too many hits, and his body had finally given up. Neji could do nothing but glare at Naruto as he crouched in front of him. I told you, Naruto stated softly. Fate is a fragile concept. Our destiny is never set in stone, Neji. I am not strong because I was fated to be. I chose to work hard to reach where I am now. Hinata calls you Neji ni-san, doesn't she? You really should stop treating her like the way you do. She only wants to unite the branch family with the main family. She looks up to you as her big brother, it is only fitting you treat her like your sister. It's time you stepped up and stopped using fate as an excuse. He then removed the resistance seal from Neji. He stood up and started walking away, letting the medics carry the injured Hyuga away. He smiled as he heard a soft, maybe you're right. Perhaps there was some hope, after all. Genma declared loudly, the winner is, Uzumaki Naruto. The entire stadium burst into a tremendous applause. Everyone was clapping as hard as they could, even going so far as to stand and start chanting, Namikaze. 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 The chant resonated around in the entire stadium, and within seconds, the entire stadium was chanting it as well. Naruto, for his part, smiled softly. The sight of everyone cheering for him, even if it was a name that he really didn't use, brought a lump to his throat. He was finally acknowledged by everyone. Bowing to the crowd, he turned away and headed to the genin stands. He received many good-natured pats on the back, and shook almost everyone's hands on the way. The words, "Great job," and "Congratulations," rang frequently in his ears. He just accepted them all with a smile and continued on his way. When he reached the stands, he took in the reactions. First there was Tamari. She was gazing at him with a small smile, and nodded at him, mouthing, "Good match." Despite what had occurred between them 2 nights ago, they could respect each other as competitors. He nodded back in acknowledgement. As he walked by her, her brother was next. He just scoffed and turned away, but Naruto could spot small beads of sweat. Smirking, he continued. Gaara was staring at him, arms crossed. His expression gave nothing away, but his body twitched every now and then. Naruto spotted the cork on his gourd shaking, as if the sand was struggling to come out of it. He didn't wait to see if it would actually come out. Shino gave him a nod of respect, acknowledging his strength. Good job, Naruto. Naruto nodded back, thanks. Naruto didn't need to guess the response of Shikamaru. Troublesome, the shadow user sighed, further slouching, if possible. You just had to go and cause a ruckus, didn't you? Naruto snorted. It was true, the crowd was still chanting his name. He shrugged in mock modesty, what can I say, I'm just that charismatic and awesome. Would Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaku no Gaara please come down? Cage box, a splendid display of skills, I say. Don't you agree, Kazekage Dono? Indeed, Hokage Dono. I really didn't expect this match to be this entertaining. Hiruzen smiled as he gazed at the blonde genin, soon to be Chunin. Well done Naruto. You performed better than expected. Though you could have ended the match far more quickly, you chose to amend Neji's ways by proving him wrong. You just might have gained a friend and a trusted comrade in him. He then frowned. It seems Naruto's teammate, Sasuke-kun still hasn't arrived. And I can't spot Kakashi among the Jonin as well, he thought, looking at where the Jonin senseis were standing. He shook his head slightly in disappointment. Kakashi, your habits just cost your genin his chance at promotion. He motioned the Jonin that was standing as his guard, informed the proctor that Uchiha Sasuke is disqualified due to his lateness. Orochimaru frowned beneath the veil. He didn't want the Uchiha to be disqualified as he wanted to see how much Sasuke had improved. Hokage Dono, can we not give him 5 more minutes to arrive? I am eager to see my son test his skills against the last Uchiha. Hiruzen kept his face carefully neutral. He knew exactly why the Kazekage wanted to see the last Uchiha in action. Apologies Kazekage Dono, but I cannot allow any favoritism towards my shinobi, last Uchiha or not. Following the orders of a superior is an important part of being a chunin. By not showing up on time, Uchiha Sasuke is showing insubordination. I cannot, in good conscience, allow such a genin such as that to progress to chunin. He may try again in the next exams after 6 months. Orochimaru frowned. That won't do. Then perhaps a compromise is in order. It would be rather disappointing if he did not fight today, as many of the visiting nobility came here specifically to see the Uchiha fight. How about disqualifying him and denying him the chance of promotion, but allow him to fight in an exhibition match at the end of the tournament against the winner? That would allow the crowd to see the Uchiha fight, but still punish him for insubordination. Hiruzen thought it over a bit. If he disqualified Sasuke, Gaara would be declared the winner. According to the matchups, Gaara would then fight the winner of the first match, which was Naruto. While he was a bit worried about letting Naruto fight such a dangerous opponent, he had confidence that Naruto would be safe. Nodding, he said, that is an acceptable arrangement, Kazekage Dono. Stan's Ino was gaping at the piece of news that was revealed to the whole of Konoha and people from beyond. To think that Naruto, the dead last of their batch and the foremost prankster of Konoha, would turn out to be the son of the man Konoha almost worshipped. I never knew, she whispered. She could not believe she missed such a big fact. She was supposed to be from a clan that were masters of the mind, yet she couldn't not see such obvious resemblance. She ought to be ashamed of herself. If not for the age, Naruto and Namikaze Minato could be clones of each other. Blonde hair of almost identical shade, azure eyes that were unique to them, it could not be more obvious than that. Sakura's jaw was almost unhinged. She couldn't believe she never saw the resemblance as well. It was so obvious. And come to think of it, she treated him like crap. The son of the hero who saved Konoha from the Kyuubi, treated like crap. Not just by her, but by the whole village, including her mother. She wanted to crawl into a hole and just hide. Kiba couldn't believe it. Well, he could, but had a hard time comprehending it. The person who he thought could never become a competent shinobi in the first place had just beat the known prodigy of the Hyuga, a person who was favored the most to win the Chunin exams. And apparently, he had done without breaking a sweat. He ruefully chuckled, I couldn't have been more wrong about him. Akamaru whined in agreement. Tenten was shaking her head in disbelief. She couldn't believe Naruto had beaten her teammate, who she believed to be the strongest genin in Konoha. But then again, he had the Yondaim's jutsu on his side. Arena Genma frowned but nodded at the message sent from the Hokage. Turning to the crowd, he announced the Kage's decision. Due to not showing up in time for his match, Uchiha Sasuke has been disqualified from the final stage of these exams. He continued despite the booing from the crowd. However, the Hokage has allowed an exhibition match between the winner of the tournament and Uchiha Sasuke in order to satisfy the visiting nobility. But he won't be given the chance to get promoted to Chunin. Therefore, winner by disqualification, Sabaku no Gaara. Stands the audience, even though they were witness to a match such as that of the Hyuga and the Uzumaki, now revealed to be the sole Namikaze, were distraught to hear that the Hokage had chosen to disqualify the last Uchiha. Many were waiting solely to watch that match, so the reason for their displeasure was quite obvious. Their spirits were lifted up a bit though, when they heard that the Uchiha would be fighting in an exhibition match with the winner of this tournament. Everyone began muttering amongst themselves excitedly. Just maybe, they might get to see a match between Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. The last Uchiha versus the last Namikaze. Up in the area for the competing genin, Naruto was frowning at the latest announcement. A bit of a partial treatment, don't you think? He addressed Shikamaru. Shikamaru frowned as well. Yeah. He is getting a chance to fight, whereas any other genin wouldn't have been considered in the first place. Naruto nodded in agreement and added to the point, Not only that, but he will be in peak condition to fight, while we would be worn out from fighting all the opponents. It's more than a bit unfair. Then he added mentally, though that match won't be happening anyways. The invasion would maybe begin as soon as the quarter-finals end. Thank you Kurama, for expanding my chakra reserves and making sure I am in top form today. He received a snort in response, I care not much for your words. Thank me by making sure you defeat that accursed Tanuki. He is trespassing on my area. Naruto smirked at the command. He planned to do it anyway. Down on the arena, Gaara turned and started walking back to the waiting area. His sand was twitching angrily as his next victim wasn't there. His blood had been pumping to fight the Uchiha, who he saw as a strong opponent. To find out he wasn't here. The only reason he hadn't started killing everyone with his sand was that his next match was with the Uzumaki. Uzumaki Naruto was someone worthy, someone who would prove his existence. Genma announced, the next match will be between Aburame Shino and Sabaku no Kankuro. Before he could say anything more, he was interrupted. Proctor, I forfeit. Kenkuro's yell was followed by a confused look from Genma and a roar of disapproval from the crowd. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Kankuro and Temari. While Kankuro did not glance at him, Temari cast a nervous and tense look at him. Naruto just turned back to the arena. He did not expect Sasuke of all people to be late to such an event. Maybe Kakashi was counting on to make a dramatic entrance for the last loyal Uchiha. Either way, he was disqualified, which meant one thing. His next match was with Gaara. Which was a good thing. He could neutralize Gaara before the invasion even began. Of course, that was not taking account of people who could likely interfere in the fight. In order for the invasion to succeed, it was critical that Gaara unleash the full form of his tailed beast. He intended to suck Gaara dry of all his chakra and as soon as he was weakened, slap the 5 elements seal onto him. He just prayed he would be fast enough. Back in the arena, Genma was announcing. Then by default, the winner of the match is Aburame Shino. Thus, we can progress on to the next match. The next match is Nara Shikamaru vs Sabaku no Temari. Naruto glanced towards his right. He smiled when a determined look came over Temari. She pulled out her fan from her sash and swiped. Naruto whistled, impressed that such a large amount of wind was generated from just one swipe. He watched as Temari jumped onto her fan and gracefully glided towards where Genma was standing. She set her fan down with one hand, the other hand resting on her hip and smirking, fully confident of her victory. Damn, that confidence makes her look so much sexier, Naruto thought with a slight nosebleed as he imagined some very naughty thoughts, ignoring the sniggering bastard within him. He wiped the blood off with his sleeve and glanced towards his left. Shikamaru had a panicked look on his face. Oi, why is it always my match that gets jumped up? He began to back away from the railing. I'm forfeiting as well. I don't care what my troublesome Ka-san says or does to me, I am not. His rant was cut off when a hand was placed on his shoulder. He turned to face Naruto with a quizzical look. What are you? It's okay Shika, Naruto said, complete with the sympathetic look. Shikamaru gave him a suspicious look, so Naruto did his best not to smile. But there's just one problem. If possible, Shikamaru narrowed his eyes even further. What? You can't forfeit. The next moment, he was standing right in front of a smirking Proctor and Temari. He blinked once, trying to figure what the hell just happened and how did he get down here. He turned around, and saw the complete look of innocence on Naruto's face. He gave a look of bloody murder at the blonde he called his friend. He had the nerve to use the flying thunder god to send him to the arena. He turned around, grumbling that at least he didn't have to walk the distance from the waiting area to the center arena. Naruto smirked when Shikamaru gave a burning glare at him. He wouldn't have been able to send Shikamaru the arena if a marker wasn't already present. As it happened to be, there indeed was a marker, on Temari's skin, right below her left butt cheek. He put it on her while they were kissing in the alley, and he was holding her up by her butt. Her dress had rose up a bit, exposing more skin than what was appropriate for people of their age. A drop of blood trickled from his nose. Happy times, he was brought back from a trip down the gutter by the proctor's call of beginning the match. He smirked when he saw Temari outright assaulting him, but had enough sense not to pursue him in the trees. He smirked as he saw the match progress, with Shikamaru passing time so as to lengthen the limit of his shadow. While Tamari was certainly clever enough to engage from long distance, she failed to see that Shikamaru was obviously leading her into a specific position. Sorry Tamari, but you weren't in the winning position in the first place. You aren't ready to beat an opponent of Shikamaru's caliber, yet. Naruto's guess about what Shikamaru was trying to do was proved right. While in the beginning of the match, it may have seemed that Shikamaru was randomly throwing kunai at her and missing. But Naruto knew that Shika didn't do anything without a purpose. When people are shown various, random pieces, they are confused and fail to see the bigger picture they make. The match dragged on for almost an hour, but at the end of the hour, Tamari was caught in the grasp of Shikamaru's shadow. While it had seemed the kunai were just thrown around randomly, each of them had acted as a sort of platform for the shadow to jump from. Tamari was too late to spot it, and finally got caught. On the arena, Tamari was frozen. She couldn't believe that she was caught like this. Damn it. I was too late to see it. I should have finished him early with a large-scale jutsu. Instead I got caught playing his game. Stands all the high-ranking shinobi were amazed and impressed. The level of planning, the number of steps he had thought ahead, this was another shining example of Chunin material. The exams this year were showcasing some real talent. Shikamaru played to his strengths, using his extreme talent for strategies to set a trap for his opponent. A trap that was clever enough not to be noticed by his opponent until it was too late. While he had not dispatched his opponent like Naruto, the skill shown was enough to tell that the lazy Nara was worthy of promotion. Naruto had owned his fight from the start. Even though everyone was smart enough not to engage a Hyuga in taijutsu, Naruto knew he was better than Neji. Even when he was confronted with Neji's defensive technique, he proved his smarts as he found a way around it. Overall, both the matches had shown that the genin from Konoha this year were worthy of being promoted. Arena Tamari felt the unnerving feeling of not being in control of her own body as it stiffly shuffled forward. It was very awkward to walk with movements not your own. As the gap closed down between them to a mere 5 feet, they locked gazes. Shikamaru's gaze was level, his eyes giving nothing away. Temari's gaze was full of defiance and fierce anger. She was glaring at him with her jade eyes so hard that Shikamaru briefly wondered if he would catch on fire. H raised his hand in the air, his shadow bind on Tamari ensuring that she did the same. She quivered, trying as hard as she could to fight it. She refused to admit defeat to this lazy excuse of a shinobi. I give up. I don't have any chakra left. His lazy voice carried over clearly, and whatever the audience was going to say died in their throat. What was the general reaction all around? Stands. Asuma was shaking his head. That kid has never been motivated for anything ever since I met him. The audience slowly started clapping throughout the stadium. People could appreciate a good battle of minds, even if it wasn't as flashy or as big as they wanted it to be. Arena Genma just snorted and announced, winner, Sabaku no Tamari. Shikamaru released his hold on Tamari, who only just managed to catch herself. She stared at the retreating back of the genin, and managed to stutter out. "Why?" Shikamaru turned around and answered, shrugging in a way that really made him look like a guy who doesn't want to be bothered for anything. It makes no sense to succumb to chakra exhaustion just for this when I might need my energy later. He turned to go to the audience stands. As he had lost, he won't be fighting any future matches, so there was no reason for him to go back to the waiting area. As he approached the place where he had spotted Choji before his fight, he was slightly surprised to see almost all the rookies and Jonin senseis present, talking to Naruto. The blonde was chuckling at one of Lee's no doubt, highly youthful statements. Everyone was trying to talk to him, and Naruto was answering all their questions with a patient smile. The guy had become an instant celebrity. He spotted Shikamaru walking up and turned away from the group, choosing to grin in the shadow user's face. Shikamaru gave him a look that froze his two teammates in place, while Sakura just gave a confused look to Naruto. Asuma and Kurenai were smirking, while Lee and Guy looked as if they would burst with their youthfulness any moment. Naruto waved a hand in his direction, grin not falling from his face for even a moment. Go on, you look like you want to say something. Shikamaru didn't bother wasting more energy to reply and merely sighed exhaustedly, dropping his glare. He dropped down between Ino and Choji. Ino's attention immediately switched from Naruto to him, causing him to mutter something about tiresome blondes. Choji, the sweet guy that he was, merely offered a potato chip with a smile. Shikamaru smiled back at his longtime friend and took a few, the crunching sound they made almost soothing to him. Arena Genma looked over to the Hokage, giving a questioning look. The Hokage shook his head and waved him to continue with the matches. Genma nodded and turned to the audience. The quarter-final matches are over. We will now proceed to the semi-finals. First semi-final match will be Sabaku no Gaara vs Uzumaki Naruto. Audience. The crowd roared in approval of the match, as they wanted to see, once again, the only son of the Yondaime in action. They were not going to see the Uchiha in action until the very end of the final match, but they weren't complaining about seeing Naruto in action in Sasuke's place. Over to where the rookies and their senseis were standing, the atmosphere was completely different in comparison to the rest of the crowd. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. 1 second, everyone was talking and joking around, the other second, everyone had grim faces. Only Naruto had a completely serious face that was not filled with any fear. No one had forgotten what Gaara had done to Lee back in the prelims. Would the contestants please come down? Gaara appeared in a whirl of sand next to Genma. Naruto took a deep breath and straightened up. He was about to walk down to the arena when he felt a hand rest on his shoulder. Turning around, he saw that it was Asuma's. Naruto, wow, he was serious, be careful down there. Kurenai and Guy also nodded seriously around him. Try to finish it as quickly as you can. Naruto smirked, I could finish it in a flash, but I've got a different strategy in mind. With that, he walked off, the rest of the rookies mumbling their good luck wishes. He snorted when Shikamaru mumbled you better not die. Ino swatted his head for that. Arena Naruto kept his eye on Gaara the entire time he walked to the center of the arena. Gaara had dropped all pretense of being calm and controlled. A grin not unlike that of a psychopathic killer graced his face as Naruto came to stand in front of him. The tension was so thick that it was almost suffocating. Gaara was releasing ungodly amounts of killer amount, his quirk already twitching madly, as if the sand had a mind of its own instead of being in Gaara's control. Naruto, instead of releasing killing intent of his own, slowly started saturating the air with a moderate amount of chakra. His chakra was very dense, in addition to being almost soothing and had a positive feeling to it, unlike Gaara's. It somewhat eased the tension in the air. Genma nervously watched both of them. Cage box Orochimaru smirked behind his veil. While he wished to see how Sasuke would do against Gaara, this was a fine arrangement as well. A match between two Jinchuriki would no doubt prove very informative. This should be a very entertaining match. Cage Dono. Your son versus the Yondaime Hokage's son, Hiruzen commented with a chuckle, hiding his nervousness about Naruto's safety. But you must understand my concern, given what happened to one of my genin in the prelims. The other Cage waved a hand, worry not, Hokage Dono. Your genin has proved himself to be most ingenious and resourceful. However, if worst does come to pass, I'll stop Gaara myself. Hiruzen had to commend Orochimaru on his acting skills. Had he not known it was his former student under those robes, he would have believed that statement wholeheartedly. He turned his attention back to the match. Naruto was up against a Jinchuriki who had full control of his Biju. He was fully confident in Naruto's skills, but he couldn't wave the worry away. Something on the arena caught both the Cage's attention. Arena just as Genma was about to give the signal to begin, a sudden whirl of wind and leaves interrupted them and received a frown from Naruto and Gaara. As the whirlwind settled down, Naruto had to stop himself from looking thoroughly annoyed. Two figures were standing back to back. Naruto mentally sighed, he really did want to make a dramatic entrance, after all. Kakashi and Sasuke were standing right in between Gaara and Naruto. Kakashi looked the same as always, while Sasuke had dramatically changed his attire, opting for a darker theme. He wore a black, one-piece version of his usual attire, with bandages wrapped around his left arm. Sasuke smirked as he came face to face with Gaara. He had trained heavily for the last month, even mastering a lethal jutsu. A jutsu that would secure him his victory. Sorry I'm a bit late for our match. But we can begin now. Gaara had made it very clear back in the prelims that he was very excited to face Sasuke in the finals and couldn't wait for the match. So it came as a shock to Sasuke when Gaara coldly replied, "Move aside, you are in my way." No reply came to his mouth, only snapping out of the shock when he heard Kakashi's voice. Is that you, Naruto?" Kakashi blinked as he came face to face with a face that looked painfully similar to his late sensei. The dots took a moment to connect, and once they did, his eye went wide. Is that you, Naruto?" Naruto was already annoyed for the interruption, so his patience was thinner than usual. He snapped back, "Yes, it's me. Now would you mind taking Sasuke to the stands with you? You are interfering with my match." Kakashi blinked and turned to Genma. "We are not late, are we?" Genma gave him his best deadpan look. "You are a bit too late, actually. Uchiha Sasuke has been disqualified due to being late for his fight and won't be fighting in any of the matches for a chance at promotion. He will only fight in an exhibition match at the very end of the tournament." Anger filled Sasuke's features and he snarled in a whisper, "You can't do that." Genma was unimpressed with the glare. "Tell that to the Hokage. It was his decision in the first place. Now get out of my arena," he motioned to them. Sasuke turned his snarl onto Naruto. "Move, Naruto. This is my fight." Naruto fired back in a calm manner. "Your match was in the quarter-finals, Sasuke. This is the semi-finals. Get off the field." Sasuke almost made to punch Naruto when Kakashi grabbed his shoulder tightly. "Calm down, Sasuke." Turning to Naruto, he gave an eye smile. The whole month he had felt tremendously guilty for not training Naruto. Seeing this as the semi-finals, it was easy to conclude that Naruto had won his first match against Neji. "Congratulations on winning your first fight, Naruto. All the best for this one." With that, he shunshined to the stands with all the rookies and Jonin senseis. Genma turned to Naruto and Gaara. "Are you two ready?" Naruto nodded, while Gaara made his impatience known. "Just started already. Mother is hungry for his blood." Genma nodded and chopped the air in front of him. "Hajime." Naruto immediately jumped back. Gaara whispered with a crazy expression, "Make me feel alive, Uzumaki." The cork on his gourd flew off with the pressure his sand was putting on it. An enormous amount of sand, almost half of it, Naruto estimated, flew out and rushed towards him. Naruto immediately flash-stepped to 20 meters behind Gaara to avoid it. "It's not enough. I'll have to goad him until he unleashes every grain of his goddamn sand." He pulled out 4 of his Hiraishin kunai, and flash-stepped back to his previous position to avoid the stab of sand. The only thing he left behind was the kunai, lodged in the ground. He repeated the process until the 4 kunai were scattered in a trapezius position around Gaara. "You won't get me like that. Come on, show me what you got." He then flashed to a kunai to escape Gaara's sand. It was a waiting game for him now. Cage box, he is not so forward in this fight as he was in his previous one, Hokage Dono. Hiruzen nodded his head. He might be scouting for Gaara's weakness to form a viable plan. "We'll just have to wait and see." Orochimaru chuckled. "Gaara's defense is absolute, Hokage Dono. He would run out of chakra faster than he would find a weakness." Hiruzen smirked. "We both know what happened to the so-called ultimate defense of the Hyuga, Kazekage Dono." He refrained from chuckling at the silence that followed. The whole audience was leaning forward in their seats, eager to see the famous Hiraishin no Jutsu in action. The rookies were all wondering what the blonde was up to. Ino asked, confused, "Why is he scattering those kunai? It's not like he's using them to attack Gaara or something." Shikamaru was frowning as well, trying to discern Naruto's strategy. Just what was he up to? If anyone looked at Sasuke, they would think that he was about to burst a blood vessel on his forehead. His jaw was clenched and eyes filled with jealousy and scorn as he looked at Naruto easily dodging Gaara's attempts, Sharingan fully activated. "What is that jutsu? Is that the reason he is so fast? My eyes can't even begin to trace his movements. He looks as if he isn't even beginning to get tired. I should be the one who knows that jutsu, so I can use it to kill him. What does he need it for? Just how far ahead of me are you, Naruto?" Sasuke was pissed as whatever jutsu Naruto was using to doge Gaara's sand, he wasn't using any hand signs, so Sasuke had no chance of copying it. Kakashi had pulled his headband up as soon as the match had begun. While he should be saving it for the invasion, he wanted to see Naruto use his sensei's legacy in action. He watched as Naruto put the kunai around Gaara, doing nothing but teleporting from one to another. His eyes narrowed as pieces of a similar tactic came to his mind, but could not piece it together. By his side, Asuma spoke up in a grave tone, "Gaara will get mad if Naruto keeps doing this. Getting that kid mad is the last thing he needs to do." Kakashi absently spoke up, eyes keenly observing the match. On second thought, that might be exactly what he might be trying to do. The three other Jonin whipped to stare at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. The genin, who had heard the conversation as well, turned to stare at him with wide eyes as well. But unlike the Jonin, there was a bit of fear and horror in their eyes. Is he mad or what? Ino almost shrieked. But Kakashi was not worried at all. From what he had seen of Naruto up until now, Naruto resembled his father more than his mother. And if Naruto was even half like his father was, he had no reason to worry. Arena he could see it, Gaara was beginning to show signs of irritation at his repeated escape attempts. He had started to flash step around as well, not wanting to give Gaara a pattern to follow his kunai. If he thought Naruto was only using the kunai to escape his grasp, he just might uproot and throw them away. Gaara was gritting his teeth as Uzumaki yet again escaped his grasp. More sand flew from his gourd as he tried cover a larger area with it, cutting Naruto's chances of escape. "Why are you escaping, Uzumaki? Face me. Now's my chance." Flash stepping to a more cleared part of the arena, he called out. "Gaara." Gaara narrowed his eyes, his sand momentarily pausing in its pursuit of Naruto. "What is it, Uzumaki? Are you afraid to face me? Is that why you are running away?" To his surprise, Naruto snorted out loud. "You think those pathetic attacks can get to me? Your sand has yet to even come close to touching me. Come on, Gaara, unleash every drop of your sand." His words had the intended effect on Gaara. More sand flew out of his gourd, and he uncrossed his arms. His face split into a truly frightening grin. Naruto internally smirked. Just one more push should do it. Naruto spread his arms out. "In your own words, make me feel alive." The last part was whispered with a challenging grin. That finally did it for Gaara. An opponent who was asking the same thing he asked from him. This was almost like a rare treat for him. No one asked him to make them feel alive, as he was usually the one to do it. With deadly intent, he whispered, "Fine, Uzumaki." He commanded all of his sand to come out of the gourd, which was truly a huge amount. It could cover almost one entire half of the arena in ankle-deep sand. He shouted as he spread his own hands, almost laughing. "Let's make each other feel alive." Cage Box Hiruzen was intently observing the match, trying to make out Naruto's plan. Naruto was mad if he wanted to fight Gaara at full power, but there was a glint in Naruto's eyes that told him that this was part of a plan. Orochimaru was barely refraining from laughing in joy. He couldn't have asked for a more entertaining match. He doubted that even Sasuke could have given such entertainment to him. He secretly signaled for his people to be ready. The time for the invasion to start was drawing to a close. Stan's every rookie and Jonin sensei watched in horror as Naruto asked Gaara to come at him with full power. He had basically just signed his death warrant, many thought. Sakura almost shrieked, "What is that idiot doing?" Guy nodded grimly, "I have to agree with your student, Kakashi. Fighting that genin at full power seems to be an extremely bad idea." Kakashi gave no reply as worry began creeping in him. He could only hope Naruto had a plan to deal with that amount of sand. Sasuke intently watched with his Sharingan active, ready to spot any hand signs that Naruto might weave. He would take any opportunity to copy Naruto's jutsu. Not once did concern rang for his teammate potentially facing his death. Arena the crowd gasped at seeing the huge amount of sand rotating behind Gaara in form of a vortex. Gaara was grinning in a way that would have sent many shinobi running in the opposite direction, but not Naruto. Naruto was prepared for this. "Take this, Uzumaki." The vortex rushed towards with the force of a sandstorm. Naruto narrowed his eyes and gathered his chakra. He jumped almost impossibly high, clean above the rushing vortex, two Hiraishin kunai in hand. He threw one of them 20 meters behind Gaara, completing the pattern he was going for. Gaara was so deep into his bloodlust that he failed to take notice of the kunai arranged around him in a pentagon. The other one went 20 meters ahead of the kunai he just threw. As he predicted, the vortex changed direction and headed right for him, when he was still in the jump. He thought he might have heard someone shouting his name, but he could have imagined it. Just as the vortex was about to hit him, he flashed to the last kunai he threw, momentarily entering safe zone. Stand Sakura could no longer hold her concern for her teammate. Everyone watched in horror as the vortex almost swallowed, at which point Sakura shouted, "Naruto." She practically melted in relief when Naruto disappeared, reappearing at the kunai he just threw. Looking back, she saw that everyone unconsciously relaxed from the tension. Kakashi didn't know that he was holding his breath until he released it. He had not seen such dangerous maneuvers in a long time. He was used to seeing his sensei do it like that, but Naruto on the other hand. It was strangely nostalgic, almost like seeing his sensei in action. Arena. Naruto appeared at the kunai in a crouch, expression serious and eyes set on the sand vortex. Gaara turned around and wasted no time in sending the vortex towards Naruto very gleefully, but this time, he split it in 4, so that it would converge on Naruto from 4 different directions. Naruto only needed 2 hand seals to make this work. He had already saturated the air with his chakra before, so his chances of success were high. Tiger Bird. Sweden. Mizu Tatsumaki no Jutsu. Water Style. Water Tornado Technique. Naruto converted the entire amount of chakra he had saturated the air with into water chakra. A giant spinning vortex made of water of his own seemed to suddenly come into existence around him. The 4 smaller vortexes of sand crashed into the vortex from 4 different sides. Naruto was rotating his water vortex at such a high speed that the sand that crashed into it was dispersed almost instantly upon contact, becoming wet and heavy. Cage Box. It is very surprising to see that he has a water affinity as well. One strong enough to draw water from thin air. Wasn't the Nadaime known for the same feat? Orochimaru asked in genuine surprise. Not every day he met ninja, let alone a genin, who could perform feat like some of the Cage. Hiruzen nodded, a relieved smile appearing on his face. He did have a plan after all, he mused. The crowd was cheering Naruto on. They thought that Naruto would escape using the Hiraishin, or worse, get crushed. But then, a tornado of water came into existence around him from seemingly nowhere. It protected Naruto from the sand perfectly. The Jonin were once again wide-eyed, including Kakashi. Kurenai shook her head. He drew water from the air around him. Most water users can't do even half of what he just did. Guy and Lee were shouting. Such youthfulness. Kakashi pointed out to his peers and the genin, whose eyes were wide with wonder at the display of power. Not just that, but that jutsu acted both as a defense and an offense in Naruto's favor. Sand becomes heavy when hit with water. So by hitting Gaara's sand with water, Naruto negated the sheer control Gaara had on his sand, ensuring his safety simultaneously. No doubt, Gaara would find wet sand increasingly difficult to control. As Kakashi explained Naruto's move, Sasuke found himself getting increasingly frustrated. Why was Naruto so powerful in comparison to him? Was he hiding this much all along? He had to painfully admit, Naruto had dealt with Gaara much more efficiently than he would have. He had nothing but taijutsu, speed, and the jutsu Kakashi had taught him to deal with Gaara, which really wasn't much compared to what Naruto had. His fire was useless unless it was hot enough to turn sand into glass, which it wasn't. He couldn't even copy Naruto's jutsu, for fuck's sake. In addition to the absence of a water affinity, he needed to see all the hand signs to copy a jutsu. Naruto obviously had a very high water affinity to use a jutsu like that too in the absence of water and with only 2 hand seals. He knew Naruto had a large amount of chakra, but this was just ridiculous. He was still not looking winded. He clenched his fist so tight that blood seeped out. The cursed seal throbbed on his shoulder, but he forcefully pushed its influence back. I will make your power my own, Naruto. Just you wait. Arena. Naruto maintained the vortex for about 5 seconds, after which the sand stopped coming. Dispersing the vortex outwards with a flourish, he smirked at the results. All the sand that he had been attacked by was now wet, saturated with water and heavy. It won't be as fast as before. Gaara watched in alarm as his sand collided into a water vortex that seemingly came out of nowhere. He realized too late, even with mother shouting in his head, what Naruto had planned, but it was too late. Almost all the sand was wet now, and only a tiny amount was available to him, the only amount he was able to pull back before it was too late. He rotated it in the form of a ring around him to prevent it from getting any more wet. Naruto didn't waste time admiring the effects of his jutsu. Forming the bird seal, he took a deep breath and let go. Sweeten. Mizurappa. Water style. Violent water wave. A jet of water was expelled from his mouth, heading towards Gaara with great force. Gaara looked stunned as the sand automatically formed as a barrier in front of him, taking the brunt of the water. Gaara hadn't felt this helpless in a long time. Uzumaki had a counter for his sand, which was a major part of how he fought. He could make his own sand, but that took him some time, which he didn't have. He would have to do it nonetheless. He molded a huge amount of his own chakra, sand particles slowly forming in front of him. He couldn't help but let his excitement grow a little. It was hard to remember just when he had let loose like this the last time. Naruto smirked as the last of the sand fell in front of Gaara, wet and unusable. He had taken into account that a sand user such as Gaara would be able to form his own sand even if he negated it, which was exactly what Gaara was trying to do now. Oh no, you don't. Boar Snake Dragon Ram. The kunai finally would come into play. Gaara's choice of standing in one place would cost him dearly. Cage box. Very clever of him to have negated Gaara's sand, Hokage Dono. I can't help but feel that Naruto-kun is well above the level of a Chunin, don't you think? Hiruzen smiled in pride as Naruto used the element of water to completely turn the tables on Gaara. He couldn't help but be reminded of Tobirama-sensei. He was pretty much the same. His mastery of water was so unrivaled that he used to turn the battle in his favor in a place where there was no water. Considering that Naruto now had a Jinchuriki on the ropes without resorting to his own Biju chakra, he was starting to feel the same. Naruto was well above the level of a Chunin. He doubted any Jonin could have turned the tides like Naruto did. Stance, holy shit. Did you see that? Ino shrieked, pointing at Naruto as if she couldn't believe it. Shikamaru slowly nodded, still trying to make sense of how Naruto did what he just did. He took away Gaara's greatest advantage. Sakura was smiling with happiness. At first she had doubted Naruto could beat Gaara, but Naruto had shown that he could find a way around the impossible. Arena Gaara was still concentrating on forming his sand when a light green shield rose up around him. He whipped his head from side to side, trying to figure out how it came into existence without him noticing. Then he felt it. He knew he was draining his chakra forming his sand, but the chakra drain was much larger than he usually felt. He then noticed the light green barrier was slowly turning into a darker shade. He looked down to his feet, noticing that he was standing in the center of a complex ceiling array shaped like a pentagon. His eyes widened in realization. This was a chakra-absorbing barrier. Naruto was smirking as he held up the ram seal. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu. Kisei Shoheiki Uzumaki Sealing Arts. Parasitic barrier was a success. This pentagonal barrier was designed by the Uzumaki clan to suck the chakra right out of their enemies. The best thing about this barrier was that the users only need to spend an initial amount of chakra to simply build the barrier, not maintain. The barrier maintained itself and grew stronger by sucking the chakra of the people trapped inside. This barrier was designed to be used by 5 people. But Naruto's dad had written in his notes that he was able to use this barrier all by himself with the help of his special kunai. The formula on the kunai acted as a sort of dimensional rift. Instead of sending himself through that rift, Minato sent his chakra to all the 5 points, thus successfully setting up the barrier. For Naruto, this was no problem at all. His chakra control was excellent and on a level that he could split his chakra and send it in different direction, through a dimensional slipstream, without any problem. And, he had more than enough chakra to spare. Gaara tried to use whatever sand he had built up, which was only a small amount, to break the barrier. Naruto called out, "It's fruitless, Gaara. This barrier will take more than just physical attacks to break." Cage box, incredible, simply incredible, Orochimaru breathed out in amazement. To be able to use Fuinjutsu like this, in conjunction to the Hiraishin, it was a testament to Naruto's genius and the incredible amount of power and skill that he had. Hiruzen was in the same state of awe, though he was able to keep it to himself. Minato was the only one who was capable of using barriers like this. For Naruto to replicate this feat, it spoke volumes of his mastery of the art. You have a true gem in your forces, Hokage Dono, Orochimaru complimented. Though he was silently lamenting why he could not mark Naruto. Putting his curse seal on a Jinchuriki was something that even he didn't want to test. Hiruzen smiled in pride. That I do, Kazekage Dono. Stands the audience was in awe of the power and skill displayed by the last Namikaze. As soon as he had trapped Gaara inside, they had erupted into cheers that could be heard throughout the entire village. Asuma stuttered out, what power. He had only ever seen barriers of this magnitude used by a single person, and that was the Yondaime. Kurenai simply gaped at the skill being displayed. Guy was shouting something about youthfulness again, so only Lee was listening to him. Everyone had tuned out both of them. Kakashi gazed in utter pride as he watched Naruto corner Gaara and trap him inside his barrier. Sensei, you would be proud of who Naruto has become, he whispered. He looked over to see the genin reactions. Sakura and Ino were cheering loudly, while Shikamaru and Choji were leaning forward with smiles, Choji's more vibrant than that of Shikamaru's, interested in seeing what Naruto would do next. He smiled at seeing their reactions. Naruto, you managed to make your comrades believe in you. Earlier, they may not have found you to be trustworthy, however today, you managed to convince them that they can trust you with their lives, Kakashi thought, pride inside him growing by the second. He glanced to the side, and found himself disappointed. He wondered, not for the first time since arriving to the stadium, whether or not he had made the right choice in choosing to ditch Naruto and train Sasuke for the finals. He was beginning to think he may have been wrong after all. Sasuke had clenched his jaw, his fists and was watching Naruto dispatch Gaara with efficiency he knew he didn't have. Naruto's way had been very professional. First, find the weakness. Second, exploit the weakness and take away the strengths. Finally, finish him off. He didn't even have words to express just how furious he was, both with Naruto and himself. He was furious with Naruto for being so much stronger than him. He was furious with himself for being so weak compared to Naruto. He wanted to be the strongest. Only when he was strongest would he be able to kill him. His Sharingan flashed, he wanted to copy all the techniques Naruto had to offer and leave him with nothing. Only he deserved to be the strongest, not him. Kakashi shook his head. Perhaps training Sasuke was a bad choice after all. Not surprising, considering the number of those type of choices he had made in his life. Sasuke looked like he would sooner kill Naruto and take his techniques for himself than call Naruto a friend and a comrade. Arena Naruto watched Gaara drop to all fours, no doubt the result of the barrier absorbing his chakra, which was now a dark shade of green. He dropped the barrier as soon as Gaara looked he would pass out. He ran forward, making sure not to use a flash step. Gaara was breathing heavily, trying not drop in exhaustion. This was the first time he had suffered something like this, and all because of that damn Uzumaki. Rage began to boil inside as mother began screaming in his head. Kill him Gaara. Kill him. Give me his blood. I want his blood. Yes mother, Gaara agreed before looking up to glare at Uzumaki. He was about to take mother's power when he was suddenly sent flying, landing in a heap. Naruto had punched him on the nose with enough force to break it, and watched with some satisfaction as Gaara was sent flying. He landed about 10 meters from Naruto, and Naruto feared that he had knocked the redhead out. But then Gaara stirred, causing Naruto to relax a bit. Gaara stood up on shaky legs, which Naruto took as a positive sign to initiate the last part of his plan. His fingertips on the right hand lit up in 5 purple, kanji characters. Cage box Orochimaru's eyes widened in panic. He knows that as well. I can't let him put that seal on Gaara. He immediately gave his signal to start the invasion. Arena Naruto was about run and slam the seal onto Gaara, making sure Shukaku didn't come out to play. Gaara felt something wet on his face, he wiped his hand and took a look at what it was. A scream so chilling erupted from his throat, and Naruto took that as his chance. If he was late, he would never be able to put it on Gaara again. Blood. My blood. Gaara screamed in pain. He had never seen his own blood before. He wasn't if he even had it. But he knew now, and it hurt so badly to see his blood. His mind snapped, and he only wanted to kill everyone and everything that hurt him, including Uzumaki Naruto. A roar that was not entirely his own came from him. Naruto was 5 feet from Gaara, fingers outstretched and ready to slap it on him, when sand erupted from Gaara, coming from God knows where, in the shape of a hand covered in purple lines, shooting towards him. Naruto flashed towards the farthest kunai, escaping from being grabbed by a hair's breadth. Shit. His danger sense rang, and he turned his head to the cage box, where an explosion took place and suddenly, feathers were falling from above. The invasion had begun, and he was too late to stop it. Wow, my longest chapter till date. Hope you enjoy, and forgive any simple mistakes I might have made. Leave your thoughts in your reviews. Later. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.